good, bad.
Welcome to another episode of Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover. Our football season starts now as we are kicking off the first of our 8 division previews by looking at our beloved NFC East that myself and Byron, obviously Cowboys fans, our division. That's where we're going to be kicking things off. One of the best divisions and most exciting divisions in football, of course. Myself, Byron and Joe are going to be joined by a couple of guests along the way, taking a look at their teams. But yeah, this series is going to be a bit different from how we did it last year, where we just had kind of chaos of people all jumping on and, yeah, talking about each team. And, yeah, it's a bit different. But Byron, Joe, welcome. We're kind of into it. This is the real start, I think, of our building up to the season. How are you both feeling about getting the first division preview episode done?
Yeah, good to start looking at it, start to put those season predictor pages together, see where end up with teams. I mean, as a Cowboys fan, it doesn't look great when I've done it, truthfully, which is a bit disappointing, obviously. But yeah, really excited to be back talking real football. I mean, I've loved our off-season drafts, but football is what we're here for.
Excellent. Joe, happy Canada Day to you as well. So on the day that we're recording this, it is Canada Day in not just Calgary, but Canada as a whole.
Yeah, thanks, Paul.
How is it?
Yeah, it's a bit dreary today. We were planning on doing something, but we've had thunderstorms and all sorts the last few days. So I think summer starts next week for when the Stampede comes around. So yeah, it's all good. And yeah, looking forward to this preview as well. It still feels like, it's miles away, but then it's like, we're already in July. So it's soon going to ramp up. And I think it was like 8 or 9 Sundays to go. So it's exciting to talk about football again and get that excitement going.
Yeah, we've got the countdown. I've seen as I'm into a big countdown to college football, then the NFL's that week or two later. So yeah, we're getting close. Yeah, as you said, it's 1st of July for us right now. By the time this goes out, it'll be next week. But we're less than 24 hours removed from England versus Slovakia at the Euros. Sum that up in 2 or 3 words for us each, chaps.
Better to be lucky than good.
You know what? I've got no words.
Just no words. Yeah, it was putrid is what I'll go for. Yeah, and we'll see. Who knows by the time this actually comes out, England could still be in or maybe out of the Euros, depending how they get on against Switzerland. NFC East, just a quick, I suppose, little shout before we get into the individual teams. Big, I suppose, headlines. Nobody's won it 2 years in a row for 20 plus years at this point. Cowboys won it last year after the Eagles fell apart. What kind of are we expecting to see out the NFC East in 2024?
Overarching, I think Washington will be more competitive than they have been. Again, looking at the previews and kind of what's happened last year, it feels wild that Ron Rivera was a Washington coach last year. It feels like a lifetime ago. I don't know if that's just me. But they've had a big overhaul, obviously new ownership. Dan Quinn now in there. A lot of off-season activity, including a new franchise quarterback. New York, I think, interesting year. I think upcoming. I think it might be a rough one. And Dallas as well, all in, but my ass, as Skip Bayless has famously said. So, I think this might be a year where, again, we don't have a repeat champion.
Skip Bayless and Jim Royal. Yeah. Joe, kind of what you thought. Obviously, you also started crossing the NFC West as a Niners fan. Are you worried that anybody from the NFC East could challenge the Niners' superiority in the NFC?
Yeah, I still think it's going to be similar to last year. You've got the 2 heavyweights and the 2 probably lower weights where so I still think the Cowboys and the Eagles, I'm probably a bit more optimistic than you guys are about the Cowboys. It felt like it's all doom and gloom coming from your end. Lately, but I think they're still going to be challenging. They are who they are in the playoffs. So it's probably the Eagles who probably more worried about. And like Byron said, I think the wild card is the Commanders this year. I think they're the ones who could make it spicy because the NFC East is always going to be on TV. There's always going to be games. There's always going to be lots of attention on it. So when you do get 4 good teams or 4 entertaining teams, it's certainly more exciting than how it's been the last few years where we've had like putrid 2 teams and it's been a struggle to watch them on Sunday Night Football. And yes, Alan, everyone not being too happy when they get them when it's their schedule. So yeah, fingers crossed the teams are better. But I still think you've still got the 2 heavyweights of the favourites.
Yeah. A weird quit that the Sunday Night Football haven't picked a single NFC East game for their schedule. It feels like forever Cowboys, Giants, Cowboys, Eagles are on Sunday Night Football, but not to be in 2024. Right. I mean, let's get into it. How this is going to work. We're going to preview all 4 teams individually, and then me and myself, Byron and Joe, are going to sum up that preview with our kind of betting leans. And they're only leans so far, I think, unless any of you guys have got any particular strong feelings about those bets early on, because we'll get our futures all locked in the week before the season starts. And yeah, that's how we're going to go. We're going to be joined by the guests definitely for the Eagles, because we've already recorded that one. And hopefully, fingers crossed, definitely the Cowboys. But sadly, we couldn't get anyone for the Commanders and the Giants guys. Just sadly, schedules couldn't make it work. So, Joe, are we going to start with the New York Giants? Let's start with the New York Football Giants. And of course, if you're listening on Spotify, you will not get the benefit of Joe's fantastic presentation that he's put together to go with our YouTube viewers who are currently experiencing that. And a massive upgrade Joe has done compared to what I put together last year. So props, Joe. Well done. Cool. All right, let's start with it. It's got animations and everything. Let's start with the New York Giants then. 2023, rough year for Big Blue. Still managed to win 6 games, though. I kind of felt when I saw they went 6-11, I was like, oh, very surprised because they were so bad. But 6-11 for third in the NFC East. Quarterback Daniel Jones tore his ACL in week 9, and which led to Tommy DeVito and DeVito Mania sweeping, I won't say the nation, but sweeping New Jersey and New York, I guess. Even Tommy DeVito's agent became quite famous. I forgot that guy's name already, by the way. But yeah, we saw him for a few. Sean something. Yeah. Offensive line was abysmal. Allowed 85 sacks over the course of the season. So no wonder multiple quarterbacks had to play for the New York Giants. And they missed out on the playoffs 6 times in 7 years. So they went from 2022 getting into the playoffs and winning a playoff game on the road to missing the playoffs once again. Coach of the year, Brian Daboll, from, top of the mountain to a bit of a chump, really, the way 2023 worked out. Yeah, kind of, how would you, Byron, Joe, just a quick summary of the Cowboys Giants season for 2023 in a few words?
I think that's like the offensive line. Like, that's the second highest average ever in the NFL per game in sacks. I think that just shows what went wrong. Obviously, they gambled on the Daniel Jones experience, give him a new contract, and that has not gone well. And as we go into the preview of next year, it's still not looking great. So, yeah, it felt like a step backwards after making the playoffs. It felt like Daboll had something going, and then it feels like it's back to the old Giants last year. So that's where I feel like that season, where it was a bit of a disaster in terms of how the future looks and where the future of the Giants are going.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Initial optimism just, blown out for sure. Along with Daniel Jones' knee. Right, let's get into those headlines from 2023. Let's have a look at kind of what's been going on in the off-season. And not only will you find that out from us, you'll also find that from the new off-season series of Hard Knocks, which I believe is premiering this week on HBO and in America. I'm not sure when we're going to get it in the UK. I've not seen anything on Sky Sports to say they've picked it up yet. But yeah, that's going to be interesting. I think that could be quite exciting new wrinkle on Hard Knocks. Yeah, I mean, clearly you two are not going to watch it. Daniel Jones is sticking around. Do or die year for both Daniel Jones and possibly Brian Daboll, despite the 2022 successes. Big additions on both sides of the ball with trades and the draft for the New York Giants. Big losses as well. Saquon Barkley left in free agency to the Eagles, and Darren Waller eventually retired. That was only a couple of weeks ago. He informed the Giants of his decision to retire and pursue music, which, good luck to Darren Waller. Let's get into it. The Giants were pretty busy free agency-wise. If we have a look at their key moves. Brian Burns in the trade from the Panthers. Singletary to replace. I don't think you can replace Saquon in one. Isaiah Simmons. Drew Lock in as a quarterback. We might see some of Drew Lock depending on how it goes. And key losses that we just mentioned that also included Xavier McKinney. Any kind of standout moves from you guys for the Giants in free agency?
I think Brian Burns is the big one, isn't he? It's kind of strength on strength for the Giants. That's where they're at best up front defensively. But yeah, losing McKinney, losing Barkley. I mean, Waller, for what he actually provided to New York, not a huge loss, I think, but it's a passing game that needs weapons, so it's a loss in that sense. But yeah, I do. I mean, that D-line, I think, I'm not going to say it's one of the best in the NFL, but it's certainly top 10. Just big boys and attacking weapons. But yeah, it's strength on strength. I think everything else didn't get enough of an upgrade, if any.
I think the big thing with that is it finally feels like, again, the Giants have got a strength. It felt like the last few years, they've never had, like, what is the one thing you can point to where it's, oh, wow, that's exciting. That's going to be dangerous for other teams. It's always felt like, oh, they're good at some places, bad at other places. They've never had a, so having Burns, having Thibodeau, obviously. If you even like the Isaiah Simmons, see how that works out. Is he's bounced around, but when he can certainly hit on a team. And Jordan Phillips again, staying in New York, having that presence and that experience that the Giants could actually do something, because I don't think they're going to blow teams out the water with their offense, but they can keep it tight, and that's that might be the kind of football that the Giants play this year, where it's low scoring games. But there's plenty of teams who have done that, where they eke out the victories, and that's all you need, especially with like we mentioned before, that I think the head coach is under pressure this year, just how bad last year went. So I'll be curious if they finished similar, 6-11, 7-10. Do you think he would be gone, or do you think they would stay another season?
I think it'd be good timing with potentially try and move on from Daniel Jones. I know it's not easy necessarily to do that, but if you are going to be there potentially to take a quarterback in the early part of the draft, then why not sort of pair it with the new head coach? I think that could kind of be the path it goes down. But it's hard, it's hard in the division. But how many more wins can you realistically get? So it's 9 got into the playoffs in 2022. It's only 3 more wins, right? And that's deemed a success of a season. When 6 of 11 is an abject failure. So yeah, I know, but I think Dabo's going to have to get the winning season to stick around, I think.
Yeah, I'll certainly find the life. I think last year that kind of, you have that QB rotation, the O-line, like you said, is an open turnstile. It's got to get something out of that offense. Like, the defense is talented enough that it's going to be passable, but yeah, that offense has to show signs of life, and a lot of that I think is going to ride on I'm sure we're going to get to the draft in a second, but Malik Neighbors is going to have to be what a number 6 pick should be coming out of the draft to really get there. Because like you said, no Darren Waller, Saquon's a huge loss. Devin Singletary is a fine, passable running back, but like you say, you don't replace Saquon Barkley 1-to-1. Not with Devin Singletary anyway. So
let's talk about that draft. And do you think there's the Giants have done enough in the draft to fill the holes they had left?
It's tough to say because the O-line didn't get any help. One wide receiver is good. I love Malik Neighbors, but he's one player. Again, they lose Darren Waller. They brought in Theo Johnson. It's just, I don't think they really had enough picks to fill all the holes, essentially. Like, they've took players. I don't think any of the picks are necessarily bad picks. I like Tyron Tracy as a, scat back, kick returner type player who could be useful down the stretch for them. But it's I don't like I say I don't think they had enough picks really to. They were poor 6-11 last year. I don't think they've added that much to become a playoff team in my mind. Certainly, I think it's going to be another struggle of a season.
Yeah, you've obviously some of those picks. I guess one of those picks, the fifth rounder, one of the fifth rounders that we're missing was what was included for Brian Burns, but and a second as well. So yeah. It feels like it's going to be a lot of work to turn around the New York Giants, and just too many holes in too many key positions. Like I said, they tried to address the O-line in free agency with some kind of veteran pickups, but I don't know if that's anywhere near enough, and certainly I haven't got anybody in the draft to help. So it feels like we could just be in for a repeat season with Daniel Jones or whoever ends up, Drew Lock, Tommy DeVito, behind that O-line, running for their lives for a lot of the time in 2024.
Yeah, I agree. I think they don't like it, even though it didn't perform last year how we expected it. It felt like, okay, you get Neighbors, you get another target. You got to help out Daniel Jones. He's no quarterback which is gonna, ascend a team, which is gonna like put the team on his shoulders. But he could be someone if he has a good enough team where, again, like he did the year before, where they got 9 wins, he can sneak out victories. And yet, even like the wide receivers they got in free agency, they feel very like third or fourth. So they got Allen Robinson, Isaiah McKenzie, Miles Boykin. They're just, third or fourth kind of receivers. And I feel that they need a couple of twos and another tight end just to, help Daniel Jones out. So I don't think I think it's really weird with the Giants because I feel sorry for Daniel Jones because he's not been put in the best position. I feel like the head coach didn't really want Daniel Jones. I feel like it was ownership who wanted to keep him and gave him that contract. So I feel sorry for him. And yeah, it feels like it could all come crashing down. But then, if they had a few injuries on the offensive line and if they get some of them back and, sometimes it's more about coaching with the offensive line rather than the player. So if they can get the scheme right, who knows? They just felt like they had way too many holes where it's not this year, it might be next year or the year after where we start seeing them being challenging again like they were, I was going to say a few years ago. It's probably over 7 or 8 years ago, like we mentioned with the playoffs. So yeah, it's I'm not optimistic about the Giants.
Cool. Well, let's then move that into and start having a look at their lines and win totals and odds because they're pretty long. Over under 6.5 wins, over plus 120, so just over even money. Under 6.5 wins, odds on -150. To make the playoffs, yes. To make the playoffs, 4-1, plus 400, and -600, so heavily odds on. To not make the playoffs, you can get 10-1 or plus 1,000 on the Giants to win the NFC East. To win the NFC as a whole, 50-1 plus 5,000, and a Super Bowl winner, which I think seems short, 100-1 or plus 10,000 for the New York Giants. Not looking good for the New York Football Giants.
No, they're going to be feeling big blue, I think.
What I would say is that they are playing the NFC South this year, the NFC East. So if some of them teams don't improve, if they get big 3 wins out of that division, then, they could easily get to 7. But if it was 5.5, I think I may have gone. I feel like they're going to get 6 wins again. I feel like they're that kind of team. So, Vegas does it again where it puts it perfectly where I'm not 100% confident for them to get 7, but I feel like they're going to get 6. So, yeah, it's certainly a tricky one. But I'm not touching the rest of them, to be honest. It's, money's not there and no way I'm going for the division winners for the Giants.
No, 10-1, don't fancy it. No, yeah, I think, like I say, I'm the same with you where I think I'd be leaning under.
I think you could have a 0 to each of those, and I'm not touching them.
Yeah, I'll lean the under for the wins for sure. But like I say, they've got a bit of maybe some soft teams on that schedule. We'll see. But yeah, I can't see them getting.
I'm taking a heavy lean on the under, I will say. I think they'll be lucky to get 4 wins, truthfully. That D-line's going to have to ball out, I think, to get them to 7 wins. And they might. But yeah, I'd be very... The under's one of my... I think it'll be one of my bets of the season, truthfully. when we get to that point if it remains at 6.5.
Oh, interesting from Byron already.
And
bit of a teaser for you there.
Just when we talk Daniel Jones and his contract, etc., there as well, I am expecting Drew Lock to play some games. The only thing Daniel Jones is guaranteed next year is for injury. So if they are 1-6 at some point, do you keep trotting Daniel Jones out there to guarantee his contract? I would lean they might end up doing a Russell Wilson of, well, I mean, the Broncos still have to pay Russell Wilson, so that's not quite apt, but they didn't have to pay him as much if he was injured. So, yeah, I think we might get to a point mid-season, towards the end of the season, if the season is dead in the water, where Daniel Jones ends up benched, even if he is fit, because they don't want him getting unfit.
Yeah. Interesting, right. Anything else for the Giants before we move on?
Best wishes.
Yeah. Good luck to the New York Football Giants. Team that's certainly now got a little bit more reason for optimism, a lot more reason for optimism. The Commanders of Washington. It doesn't quite work the other teams, does it? The New York Football Giants. Yeah, the Washington Commanders. New head coach, Dan Quinn. Quarterback at number 2. We'll get into all that. Let's get into their 2023 season. Oh, do you need me to stall for time of it, Joe? Yeah, okay, we're stalling for time. Excellent. So let's get into the Washington Commanders. Their 2023, I suppose, season headlines. I've got some of this up in front of me. I guess I could just do that. They've also finished 6-11, but were for 4th in the NFC East. Sam Howell leads the league in sacks. 65 times he was sacked, and interceptions. 22. So much so that Byron, you cashed Sam Howell interception. No, Joe cashed.
Yeah.
Sam Howell, league leader for interceptions. Lost 8 games in a row to end the season, sinking Riverboat Ron's reign as head coach. Great graphic from Joe there. Excellent. Do you want me to compliment that more? No, okay. Missed out on the playoffs 8 times in the last 9 years that the Washington Commanders football team, whatever, missed out in the playoffs. Yeah, quick summary then of I think Joe's graphic of Riverboat Ron on the boat sinking ship covers it. But yeah, quick sentence summary of the Commanders 2023 season.
Yeah, I think the sinking ship does it all really. Yeah, woeful, rudderless, and not a great year for first year of new ownership, but I think it's a real fresh start now is really you get grips to owning an NFL franchise, and, Rivera was always a, dead man walking and ended up being a dead man sinking by the end of it. So, yeah, fresh start in Washington. Yeah.
Needed. And, we'll see now. Plenty of moves in the off-season. First being taking Cowboys defensive coordinator and former Atlanta Falcons head coach Dan Quinn across as head coach. I mean, a big move. I think that Dan Quinn worked wonders with that Cowboys defense, turned it from a massive liability that it's been to a strength in the regular season, not so much in the playoffs. But yeah, do you think you can do similar things? Yeah, good shout out. Thanks, Joe, for pointing it out. Yeah, I said the Commanders went 6-11 because it was on the graphic. They didn't. They went 4-13, which is why they were picking second in the draft. But it's okay. Look, we own up to our mistakes here. But yeah, do we see that Dan Quinn can turn around? I mean, Washington have got some talent, especially on that defensive line. Do we see that Quinn can do a similar job to what he was able to do with the Cowboys defense?
I think he should certainly be an upgrade. I think, again, no disrespect to Ron Rivera, who I like as a person, but I don't think it feels like a while since he's been a good head coach. I know he had his spell with his Panthers. I think he's won 2 head coach of the year awards as well, which seems wild. But I think again, as the graphic says perfectly here, raise the floor with all these veteran signings. Your Zach Ertz, your Austin Eckler's, who are just always professional football players who I think give you such a stable floor. I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs because of it, but I think you're going to have a lot less kind of embarrassing seasons with that kind of attitude and that kind of base level of competence. And yeah, the big big one, obviously, is the new dawn at QB. Jaden Daniels in. And I'm not sure there's a more exciting quarterback prospect in the draft. I mean, Caleb Williams, to me and a lot of people, was the number one prospect, but Jaden Daniels is electric. And Sam Howell, he's now obviously gone to Seattle with a pick exchange. I felt a bit for Sam Howell because it was really tough to kind of judge him on what he did last year. He put up numbers, but I mean, they were throwing the ball at an insane rate to do so. He was taking a lot of sacks, taking a lot of interceptions, throwing a lot of yards as well. But it was such a hard environment to judge him in because the enemy's scheme was just throw the ball every single down, it felt like. Certainly interested for Jaden Daniels. That O-line, I think they need someone electric behind them because they struggled mightily last year. So, we'll see how that pans out for them. Like I said, a lot of veterans and exciting rookie quarterback. So,
we got a new head coach. We've also got a new offensive coordinator. So you alluded to the enemy in for a year, gone. Cliff Kingsbury, former Arizona Cardinal head coach. He's back in the NFL as offensive coordinator for the Commanders. How are we going to see that relationship work? So Kingsbury done some work with Caleb Williams at USC. He's also famously worked with Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech. What do we see how is this going to work? I think Kingsbury and Jaden Daniels.
I think it'll be interesting. I think when it goes right for Cliff Kingsbury, it goes really right. And, a bit like maybe what Jaden Daniels is going to be in the league. I think he's a little boom bust as an OC and as a head coach, as it turned out. If it hits, it's going to hit really well. But I do worry that all line's going to be an issue. I think there's going to be a lot of wide receiver play. Kingsbury, a big fan of the air raid. I think he'll tone it in some. To Dan Quinn, I think will make him tone it in some because again, DQ is a defensive coach, so I think he'll want to see more. Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler than just 4 wideouts every single snap. I think there's potential for it to be a match made in heaven, but I think there is also potential for it to not be an instant success as well. I think there might be a bit of growing pains for both.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's got the weapons there to run some style of that offense. Particularly, you've got a solid number one in Terry McLaurin. Jahan Dotson's interesting. Luke McCaffrey, I think, and we'll get into the draft. He's one that's real interesting.
Yeah.
I think for me around what he can do. Jameson Crowder's there. Back, was he at the Jets last year and come back? I've got familiarity with the place. I think it's quite interesting. And then you've got, you mentioned Zach Ertz before as a pro, and Ben Sinnott as a tight end prospect is interesting as well. So I think there are the weapons there to run it. It's just how long the leash does he get? And of course, Eckler too. Let's talk about the key moves. You mentioned it, Eckler, Bobby Wagner, massive again. We're familiar with Quinn from Seattle. And just a tackling machine at linebacker. Tyler Badage, center from the Cowboys. Frankie Louvu from the Panthers. Again, another solid pro. They did lose some, we mentioned Howell went, but lost Fuller as quarterback. Brissett went as well. And also Curtis Samuel, which, again, he could have done, again, with Jaden Daniels. That could have been an interesting fit, but he's gone to the Buffalo Bills. We've talked about Daniels a lot, but just to use the Heisman, he won the Heisman last year at LSU. 3,800 yards through the air for 40 touchdowns versus 4 interceptions, and then an additional 1,100 yards on the ground with a further 10 rushing touchdowns. We've not seen someone I don't think it's quite as, I don't know, I'm not quite sure who to compare it to. It's easy to say Lamar, but I don't think it's quite like that.
I think he's more RG3 than
I was going to ask Byron, in terms of fantasy, where you're thinking of Daniels, is he someone where you're going to gamble and take him high, or is it too much risk reward? That kind of how you seeing it?
Yeah, I think I'm going to be gambling on him. Not in that top tier, but I'd rather gamble on a Jaden Daniels and Kirk Cousins or Matthew Stafford, for example, who are solid all the time, but I don't think have got game breaking potential. If Jaden Daniels hits, he's a top 5 quarterback in fantasy. Because running quarterbacks are just kind of broken in fantasy. If you can get one who hits, it's a league winner. So, I remember doing that with RG3 back in 2012, and just instantly it was oh my God, this is the best quarterback in fantasy. I'll be overdrafting Jaden Daniels at his ADP.
Nice. Anything else? Sort of, I mentioned Luke McCaffrey, but they've got 6 picks in the top 100 there, so 6 of the top first 100 players that went off the board. Any others that sort of jump out as kind of real difference makers for the Commanders?
I feel like Johnny Newton got mentioned quite a lot in the draft process. Obviously, I think it's still come out that his foot injury and is still a concern. So you never like to hear that. And is he one of them players where you don't really hear anything like this year, but it's maybe the next year but he was that high up on a lot of people's board. And I think it was the injuries which affected him. And even Mike, I don't even know how to say that surname. I'm not even going to attempt it.
Sanders.
There you go. The cornerback, yeah. I actually really like him as well. I was hoping the Niners would go for him because they were similar. They were around about that and looking for a cornerback. And I think it's just a very Dan Campbell kind of moves where they're just stocking up that defense. And I feel like that's what I think the good thing for Dan Quinn. I said Dan Campbell then. Dan Quinn is it feels like the offense in terms of like the weapons it's already there. Obviously the offensive line's not great, but in terms of like certainly the wide receivers and now getting Eckler in and you got your quarterback. It was all about getting that defense up and running. And I think he's made some good picks in free agency and in the draft. But I didn't also mention I didn't put in the losses because obviously they happened last year, but obviously they lost 2 of their main stars as well with Sweat and
Chase Young.
Chase Young, there you go. So they were supposed to be like their superstars. I don't think it quite worked. I think Sweat was really good and obviously showed that in the Bears. And I think a lot of players they did guess. So I know we only mentioned 4 there, but I could have listed another 10. I think there's, Armstrong from the Cowboys. There was loads like Cleveland Fallon, Nick Allegretti, Zach Ertz. They seem to get quite a lot of players in. So I think, like we said about the floors raised, but are they going to be, is it that top end talent? They've obviously traded away to sustain. So I think overall, I'm actually excited for the Commanders for the first time in a while where it does feel like it could be a bit of a boom or bust, but at least they're excited going in.
Yeah. I mean, I think that that defensive line is also, they've, with what they've got Jazon Newton, Allen already. Sorry?
So I was saying Jonathan Allen. I didn't know if you got
Jonathan Allen. Sorry, I was like, it's Jonathan Allen. No, it's Josh Allen who plays the Jaguars. No. Yeah, Jonathan Allen. They brought Fowler in, who was just kind of a real role player for the Cowboys. Armstrong, who had been getting better and better year on year, I think, for the Dallas Cowboys as well. Re-signed Great Britain's own F.A. Obada as well as part of that line. So it feels like they've got a lot of talent there on that D-line. And it feels like even though they've got rid of Young and got rid of Sweat, it still is going to be a big strength of theirs. And it has been for Quinn with the Cowboys.
Yeah, and I know we said an awful lot of names there. You probably mentioned him. Sorry, I just didn't catch it in passing. Jeremy Chin, I think, is a real upside player as well at safety. Maybe not had the best year last year, but like throughout his spell in Carolina, he's been very highly rated. So I think it's another great Dan Quinn type of move to, again, just raise that floor of the team.
Yeah, excellent. Cool, good stuff. Right, let's have a look at the lines for the Commanders. Lines and odds, business stuff. Here at Good Teams and Great Teams Score. Same line as the Giants, over under 6.5. Minus 130 over under 6.5 is even money, plus 100. To make the playoffs, 3-1 or plus 300. Heavily favoured to not make the playoffs at minus 400. And then 10-1, same as the Giants, to win the division. 60-1 to win the NFC, and 125-1 to win the Super Bowl. I think it's crazy that they're bigger odds than the Giants to win the conference and to win the Super Bowl. I mean, neither are going to do it, but just in the balance of things, I think the Commanders are a much better team.
And I think if one of them can catch lightning in a bottle, it's the Commanders as well, which is really what you need to get anywhere close to either of these. And yeah, I had a heavy lean on the Giants under. I'm really torn on this one. This was one like Joe. I think with the Giants, that's 6-7 wins. I think I haven't finished doing my predictor sheet yet, but I did do the NFC East. And I think I had the Commanders at 6-11, that would be. So it's a really tough one. I guess I would probably just take the under, but I'm probably just not going to bet the line because I think, again, if Jaden Daniels does catch lightning in a bottle, find it really hard to say they'll be division winners, but they could certainly make the playoffs. I think I'd rather bet them at plus 300 to make the playoffs than stump a ton on minus 400, because with so many teams getting in the playoffs nowadays, plus 300 doesn't seem an awful bet, even if I do only have them projected for 6 wins. But I think they're one of them teams that the upside is there because there's such an unknown at quarterback.
Look, we talked about it a lot last year. 9, if you can get it to 9, you've got a great chance. 9 wins, you've got a fantastic chance of getting in the playoffs. So, yeah, can they do that? If you've got maybe at 6, maybe at 7, it doesn't seem too big of a leap to get to 9. Again, you've already mentioned when we talked about the Giants before, Joe. You could run the table against the NFC South teams potentially, and there's 4 wins already.
And obviously the Giants as well. If we're not, confident the Giants, and they've got the Cardinals, and you expect them to be the Cardinals. You have got the AFC North, which obviously is a lot tougher, so that might be for loss. But they've also got Titans as well. So there's a lot of teams where it's a coin flip. Who knows what's happening with the Steelers?
They play the Panthers. I think put that out. So it just seemed a real good opportunity to get that over that win total. Cool. Anything else to add for the Commanders before we move on and head over to the Cowboys? That's where we're at.
Let's just give them go on, Commanders. Just give them an exciting year. I feel like they could be the team where everyone's clamoring over, like you mentioned about Jalen Daniels, when the RG3 effect, where it just brought a new breath of fresh air into the league, and it was exciting to watch. So, like I said, hopefully they're fun and exciting, and it helps out the schedule in the NFC East.
Excellent, cool, good stuff. Right, let's hand over then to us with our Cowboys guest, and we're going to take a look at the Dallas Cowboys. And we move on to talking about mine and Byron's team, the Dallas Cowboys, and to get a different perspective on that, so you're not just hearing the ramblings of myself and Byron that you have to put up with all season long. We've got Paul Stewart from the UK Cowboys Fans World's Team Podcast. Paul, welcome to Good Teams and Great Teams Cover. Thanks for joining us. How's it going?
Thank you very much for having me, dude. And I'm doing great, man. Have a wee slightly cough, but other than that, I'm doing fantastic, my friend.
Excellent, good stuff. As always, we ask anybody that comes on, you're involved in producing a lot of Dallas Cowboys content yourself. Tell us what you've got going on. I've seen all the bits for the World's Team podcast. I've seen the UK Cowboys Fans podcast as well. Seen that popping up and all over. So can you tell us what's going on? Where can we see it and what you've got coming up?
Yeah, so the UK Cowboys Fans, you can find on YouTube or find our Instagram, all the social medias. It's been going on for now 6 years now. We've been doing this now. And the World's Team, who we were part of the Blogging the Boys network, part of SB Nation, and not only just our podcast, but all the podcasts within SB Nation, the whole podcast program dropped. So now we went fully independent now with the World's Team. So we're now just trying to basically spread the awareness, try and bring Cowboys fans from all across the world and just like get together and just see if we can try and meet up if we're ever going to a game, all that type of stuff, and also just try and deliver the news and get other fans' perspective. Like, we've got a lot of friends from Big D Deutschland in Germany. We've got friends from the Cowboys España, Cowboys France, and we've got the Japanese Cowboys fans from Osaka as well. So there's a big collection of Cowboys fans from different parts of the world that we try to connect to.
Nice, truly is the world's team. Absolutely. Good stuff. And keep flying the flag. Of course, we're a little bit biased, me and Byron, as mentioned, also Cowboys fans. And we're going to get into the Dallas Cowboys. An interesting year for 20. So we'll start with 2023, Paul, just a quick summary, and then we'll head into the rest. An interesting year. It's always an interesting year in Dallas, right? 2023, another 12-win season for the Dallas Cowboys, 12-5, under the tutelage of Mike McCarthy. Second seed in the NFC, won the NFC East. A little bit of support from the Eagles, kind of falling apart a little bit down the stretch, to say the least. Third straight 12-win season, as we mentioned. 9 All-Pros, which is most of the league, including Deron Bland with his 5 interception returns for touchdowns. An incredible achievement and an incredible run. Not only did he do it in the season, he did it in 12 games.
Yeah, I was there to witness that as well.
Oh, nice, on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, at Thanksgiving, yeah. So that was the game where me and the UK Cowboys fans went over for that game, and that's the thing we're planning to do next year for next year. But I'll be perfectly honest, I don't really remember much of the game because of the amount of alcohol I drank. All I remember was the pick six and Dolly Parton. That's all I remember.
That's all you need to remember from that game against the Commanders. Yeah, what a run Durham Bland, and he wasn't the season before. He showed he was pretty nifty with the turnovers, but yeah, 5 interception return touchdowns for the season, which was a record. And yeah, the last part, how it ended, lost to the Packers. That should say 7th seeded Packers in a wildcard game, 48-23 at home in the playoffs in the wildcard round. How would you sum up 2023 in just a few words, Paul?
Crashing down when we really needed to do it.
Yeah.
Like, the best way to really describe, especially the Green Bay game, is we shouldn't not go away from the actual game plan. Like, for me, the problem was not the offense. The problem was our defense going from man coverage to zone coverage, and it completely tore us apart. Jordan Love was having a field day with that regard, I thought. But don't get me wrong, like with Dak Prescott, he did make mistakes, but I felt he was kind of more pressured to kind of try and keep the game alive in that regard. So it was more forced mistakes. If it was more of an even game playing field, it would be a whole different conversation. But I feel like Dan Quinn failed us in that game, if I'm being perfectly honest. And I'm a Dan Quinn guy. Well, not now, but I was. but yeah, that's kind of how I kind of sum up with the Green Bay game. All because one particular player was not 100%. They tried to change the scheme. For me, that was obviously Stephen Gilmore we're talking about. It's like, well, if Stephen Gilmore's not 100%, get someone else in, next man up, as the great Bill Belichick always says, next man up. Don't deviate from your game plan. So that's how I kind of feel with regards to how the season ended. Just crumbling down.
Yeah, and I think that's a real good assessment of kind of the wild card game around. Just kind of going away from the game, like going away from the strengths and what had worked so well during the season, and yeah, trying to just outthinking yourself and outmaneuvering yourself for no reason to go down so big so early. It just made it a very, very difficult task. And yeah, look, usually I see these things come in with the Cowboys, but that's one I didn't see that coming in, especially in that way.
Yes, yeah, we were like the heavy favorites going into the game. We had home field advantage. Like everything was in our favor. What we failed to do was stop the run. Aaron Jones again tore us apart. Again, like I don't know how many times he's done this to us. It just seems to be every single game Aaron Jones is on the field for Green Bay. It just always seems to step it up when it comes to playing for Dallas. And obviously that one particular play where no man was close. I can't remember the wide receiver or the tight end's name, but basically there was like 15 yards, not even near this guy, and went in for the touchdown. It's like, are you kidding me on here? It's like, this is just, it was embarrassing. Like, and rightly so. We should be embarrassed about it, but we need to kind of like, okay, dust the settle. We need to move on and think about next year.
Yeah. Well, let's move on and let's start talking about next year. I think we should, exercise those demons of that Packers game. Sorry, apologies to Joe, by the way, because I keep ruining his animations that he's put together on the screen. I will get them right in some of the transitions. Off-season headlines. I think the first one, I think most expected Mike McCarthy to be fired after the way it finished in that game we've just talked about. But Mike McCarthy keeps his job, stays on as the head coach. He's got 1 year left of his contract. Still no contracts for Dak, CeeDee Lamb, or Micah Parsons, who are all due. A number of departures, but Ezekiel Elliott returns after his year in Foxborough with the Patriots. Jerry proclaimed he was going all in at the start of the offseason. Not quite seen that as yet, and there's not long left for him to show his hand. What have you made of the offseason so far, Paul? And were you surprised, first of all, that Mike McCarthy did stay on after what we just talked about, the debacle of the Packers game?
I'm not surprised at all. Like when you look at the overall season and stuff like that, like the only thing that was really disappointing really was we lost to teams that we were trying to beat, like the teams that were above us in terms of the like coefficient type of thing, like the win-loss ratio, stuff like that. So likes of Philadelphia, Buffalo, Miami. But the biggest one for me was Arizona early on in the season. So that was a wee bit of a problem. But in terms of after that, wins against LA, Rams, the Chargers, obviously Carolina, like teams that we would expect to win. But when it came to the big moments and stuff like that, I kind of felt like there was some kind of stumbling block. Like it seemed to be that we were too focused on CD Lamb at times. We want to utilizing the players we would like to use, like Gallup, for example. Like, don't get me wrong, Gallup coming back from at the ECL, he's now moved on to pastures new, and I've always liked Michael Gallup, but he was just not the same player he was. Brandon Cooks, for the speed and the consistent seasons he's had in his NFL career, didn't really kind of set the world alight. The only players that kind of really stood out for me in terms of offense was obviously Lamb, but also Jake Ferguson. Our running game was a wee bit that was quite diminished, I thought, at times, even though statistically, Tony Pollard still had a good season statistically, but it just didn't look like that when you're watching it on screen. So, but I'm not surprised McCarthy kept his job because he's only got 1 year left. And obviously, with this year, we've brought Mike Zimmer in for 1 year contract. So, and obviously, the latest news headlines that McCarthy's fed up, like with how he's being undermined in Dallas. So that just stirs the pot again in Jerry's world. So it's one of those things, so like anything Cowboys news is always going to go straight to ESPN, your Stephen A. Smiths, your whoever. It's always going to go there. So I'm not surprised that it's making headlines. Whether that's true or not, doubtful. I don't know. But we've got our close sources within DallasCowboys.com, and they're just like, it's just pretty much chit for chat right now. Nothing's really kind of really spoken out type of thing. We don't know if it's true or not, so we just need to kind of take it with a pinch of salt at the moment.
They're a really easy franchise to talk about when there's no news, to be fair, Dallas, aren't they?
No, they're not afraid at all. Like it seems like you're giving a superior press conference just for like even a blockchain sponsorship right now. You know what I mean? Like in terms of the contracts for Dak, Lamb, and Parsons, we knew going into the end of this season this was going to be a struggle in the first place due to the salary cap, especially with Dak Prescott. He's got 2 years of voidable years, which is going to accumulate to, I can't remember the top figure in my head, but it's like between the 70 to 90 million for those 2 years combined. So that, I will say though, that will get re-signed during training camp. I've spoken to Kyle Yeomans, who runs one of the podcasts on DallasCowboys.com. He is certain that's going to be the case, because obviously with the expiry period, we're moving on to the next season. It creates new freeway for the next upcoming season. CD Lamb, though, is the big question mark. Obviously, the reports of that, it's been he wants 32 million, and I've seen some articles that, and even let me just get the tweet actually if I can get it. In fact, but basically, one of the reporters from DallasCowboys.com saying it won't be 32 million. It's absolute BS. Why would he want to settle to be the second paid wide receiver? It's going to be more than that. Like every wide receiver is going to get more and more and more, and the cap's going to go higher and higher and higher. So why would he settle for second best? So, and with Parsons, I don't know. I really don't know about Parsons right now. Like I love Micah Parsons. I think he's great. But I think there's just a lot of outside of football distractions right now. It's just really construing that right now. But I think he'll get a new contract. I think he will, but it won't be this year, because obviously we've got the exercise for the 5th-year option, because of him being a 5th-round draft pick. When it comes to Ezekiel Elliott, I'm more than happy with that, because it brings a bit more stability, gives that layer of extra protection for Dak Prescott. We've made reinforcements on the offensive line, bringing in Cooper Beebe from Kansas State, and we brought in Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma. So again, and obviously we've had the losses with Bayadish gone and stuff like that. So I think it's a good reinforcement to give Dak that push again to really make some damage. Whether that will come to fruition, but I'm particularly excited to see Cooper Beebe of all the players that we did draft. I think he's an absolute beast. But and I think I don't know what you guys think, but the whole all-in thing, I'm sick and tired of hearing it. I really am.
Yeah, it is. And as soon as Jerry says something like that, it's just a stick to be beaten with all off season long and all through the season, because to make that proclamation that we're going all in, and then to be so passive. And we'll get to free agency now. Actually, I think it's a good link. Let's move on. You mentioned there, Paul, about the people. A couple of the key players that they lost on the old line: Talbot Dash, Tyron Smith. There's a couple of examples, but as far as it went was Eric Kendricks, Ezekiel Elliott. Really, that's kind of as far as it went. There was a couple of others, but that was the activity when they lost. I think we put it, is it 8 starters from last year? 8 or 9 players that were started across the
round about that, yeah. Dorrance Armstrong was one of them as well. He's now off to Washington. He was given a massive contract by Dan Quinn in Washington. No, there was no way Dallas was going to compete with that. No chance. Especially with but when it comes to Eric Kendricks, I think that's been a really underestimating signing. Because when you think about it, Eric Kendricks spent the most of his time with Mike Zimmer, right? He's got the mental capacity. He chose the lower contract to reunite with his coach. He could have joined San Francisco if he wanted to. So
he was there by all accounts, He
almost signed he almost signed a dotted line. But Kendricks going back, he knows that at this point in his career, he feels like he can actually bring more to the table towards other players like Overshawn, all the other guys like. Oh God, I'm trying to remember the bloody roster. Who else is in our linebacker core right now? My mind's went
pretty sparse.
Yeah, because we've also brought in guys from the UFL now to fill in the gaps as well. Yeah. And we've had some luck with that as well. Obviously, Brandon Aubrey. Well, he was USFL, XFL, and same with Devante Turpin. So we've had some success bringing these cheaper players from the summer leagues. Essentially, not all of them obviously do pan out, but with bringing in Kendricks, I think he's going to bring a lot of knowledge, and he's going to bring in the Notre Dame linebacker we drafted, Latafu. We brought him in.
I'll pop the draft class up on the screen. Yeah,
thanks. Maris Latafu. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so he's going to. I think they two are going to link up. Being in the game film, like Latafu is very much like a study demon. Essentially, reminds me a bit of a Sean Lee character in terms of preparation. I wouldn't say he's as gifted as Sean Lee. There's still a lot of qualms about him in terms of lateral movement from him, but in terms of his downward speed, hitting the blitzes, breaking back into coverage, love it. But for him to learn from like Kendricks what he's expected, this is what Mike Zimmer wants you to do.
Yeah,
like. The more early on they two can link up, I think it's going to benefit this linebacker core, and hopefully actually might eliminate the damages going towards this upcoming season.
Yeah, Lufal kind of has that profile where, again, great shout about kind of maybe some comparisons to Sean Lee. I just hope, they've had so many problems with injuries in that linebacking core in terms of,
LVE,
Andresh, Jalen Smith, Sean Lee. Just being injuries and just couldn't stay on the field.
Overshawn right now.
Blown his knee out, rookie year gone from blowing his knee out. So you've got him coming back. That's almost like a brand new player because you've not had him before as well. So it is, it's an area that does need work. We're transitioning safeties to play at linebacker, and they do just need that in there. And I think we've highlighted from that Green Bay game talked about, and it was in other areas as well. Time where they were just getting killed in the run game, and I think that's where that kind of second level run support is needed to kind of help the D line. So we'll see if Lufal can be part of that. And even shout out to, I think you're right, Cooper Bibby is going to be a beast. I wonder, and I've not heard too much, but I wonder if he's going to play center. I don't know.
I think he will. He's been taking pretty much all during the OTAs practicing at center. He's had experience not playing a game at center, but he's had plenty of training opportunities during Kansas State to pretty much play at every position, like during his training, during off season with Kansas State. So he's fully aware, because the reason why he did that is so that if he could prepare for any case scenario, if he gets drafted, he might get asked to play a certain position. So I think that is the case. What I know, if you look at Cooper Beebe's highlight reel, this guy is a pancake machine. I absolutely love Cooper BB. Like, I still couldn't believe we still got him at number 73 in the draft. I thought he would have been drawn like in the 50s and the 60s. So for him to be like number 73, and not to mention the fact that we picked that up from our trade back to get Tyler Guyton.
Yeah,
we picked up that extra third round pick, and then we got 2 offensive linemen for the 1 pick essentially.
Yeah, and it did, it's needed, and we've seen that injection of youth into the the Dallas Cowboys O-line. It's been needed. Obviously, we've seen gradually, we'll look at topical beers, but Travis Frederick, that was such an important part of it, go out. Tyron Smith now. Age is just catching up with Age is just caught up with him, no doubt, can still play at a high level, but you again just can't keep him on the field. And then we've seen Tyler Smith now, Tyler Guyton, Cooper Bebe, and hopefully reinforce that and have another run where we can have a real solid, offensive line to build around once again.
Yeah, and the best thing, we've just now got the confirmation now that Tyler Smith is now locked down at left guard. He's not going to be transitioning back to left tackle. He's going to be purely fundamental as a left guard now, which is great. That means he can just purely focus on his certain position. And if anyone's ever played offensive line before, like the transition from trying to like pass protect from the outside edge compared to like dealing with defensive tackles in the inside, that's a slight difference. Like you're dealing with more monsters on the inside, you're kind of worrying about inside gaps between your A gap and your B gap. Whereas even though if you're on left tackle, like you could be pushed wide out as much as you could based on what the edge rusher's doing. So there is a big difference in terms of that, and especially when it comes to run blocking as well. Like try and get, like if you're running like a run route with all the offensive linemen are shifting all to the one side, try and get across the defensive end if he's on a 5-tech. That's the tough job. So, but it's going to be very interesting to see how Guyton does, because the guy's got size, he's got power as well, and that's the one thing I do like. But the only thing I don't like is the fact that it's just the inexperience. That's the only thing. He does still make a bit of rookie errors, so hopefully he will kind of pick that up. Again, Tyler Smith had that in his rookie season, still kind of making mistakes, but he's starting to build up that character now, made it to the Pro Bowl last year. So hopefully we can actually see that ongoing development with these offensive linemen that we're bringing in.
And I wonder if there's a move or two to be made through training camp, maybe to get some experienced tackle or two in to help that development of Guyton or Tossa. There's still some there, and there inevitably will some that get cut or leave teams during kind of training camp. And
yeah. I mean, I've not seen any kind of headlines in that direction. What could be scenarios of players leaving or what we're getting cut or stuff like that. It's still way too early to say. Training camp's just around the corner, so we probably won't know till within the first week or two within training camp to get a good idea. Somebody may be on the verge of getting cut. Like I've already got 1 or 2 players I'm kind of worried about already, but it's not on the offense, it's on the defense right now. And that's obviously Chancey Golston. Where does he sit right now? Because he's kind of bulked himself up to be like a brand new version of Tyron Crawford, a guy that can play edge and play as a free tech. So with Mike Zimmer, he doesn't like to reposition his players from like go from outside back into the inside. He's very traditional when it comes to his defense. So I think Chancey Golston is going to have a bit of a battle to kind of convince Zimmer to stay on the Cowboys this year. Yeah,
it's interesting, like I say, flipping to Zimmer. And I think they needed somebody like that, somebody experienced again to come through what Dan Quinn's taken, as much as it was rough how it ended against the Packers, and we keep saying as that defense has come on leaps and bounds in the last few years. So from where it was constantly a point of weakness for the Cowboys. We always talked about kind of offensively how they were so strong, and yet they were having terrible defenses. And actually, it's that defense has come on so far that it's a major strength, and it's just around putting the other pieces together now, hopefully to make a strong team. Any of the moves where you think, or anyone maybe that's less heralded who you might see as a bit of an X factor player for the Cowboys in 2024, Paul?
In terms of who we just brought in?
Who brought in, or someone maybe that hasn't contributed as much before that might get their chance this year?
Well, I'm very excited to see Overshawn, what he can do. Like if he can stay fit, like obviously not like knock on wood, because we didn't get to see him at all. Like the only glimpses we got is him doing tackling drills during training camp. Then after that, he picked up the injury. So for me, I really want to see how Overshawn fits into the narrative here, because this guy is very dynamic as a linebacker. I was really happy when we drafted him, like being a former Texas Longhorn as well. So I was quite happy with that. Obviously, the rookie I'm actually quite interested in is Ryan Fournoy and Kalen Carson, the cornerback and wide receiver. Fournoy, if you look at his rack score, it's off the charts, even though he played for a smaller school, but his stats is ridiculous in terms of speed, his four-cone drill, all the above. Like, he was right up there on the 95th percentile in the rack score. And Kalen Carson is looking very sharp after watching his off-season videos right now. So I'm actually quite interested to see how he's going to go into training camp right now, because obviously a lot of players like to post like working out with positional coaches outside of the facility. You're seeing Carson kind of posting that type of stuff as well. And I was like, oh, very interesting. So that it's bringing a bit more competition, and it could actually help like ease off the pressure. Like if Diggs is not 100%, at least we've got someone that could potentially fall back on as well.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, I think good draft. I think last year, Cowboys for the last maybe 10 years, so I've had pretty decent draft classes. I think maybe last year we've still not seen the best out of Mazzy Smith yet, and there wasn't too much that came out of that class. But I think this one looks like there's potentially going to be a lot of these rookies on the field playing big minutes. Big number of downs for the Cowboys.
I will say having Mike Zimmer is going to be the best thing that's ever happened to Mazzy Smith right now. It's going to be the best thing for him. Zimmer's going to be direct. He's going to tell him to his face. He's going to tell him, it's like if anyone wants to know what Mike Zimmer's like, go back and watch Hard Knocks under the Cincinnati Bengals when he was the defensive coordinator back then. That is what you're expecting. It's like, he's not afraid to tell you. He's not here to be your friend. He's not here to do anything. He's there to coach you, and he's right here. He coaches you in the most, it can be brutal, but he's fair. And that's what we need. We don't need any softening the blow. It's like, oh yeah, he did that, but just do this. Like, no, it's like get your head out your ass type of talk. It's like really just try and get the best out of these players, just getting in their faces. So, and that's one thing I feel as though was kind of missing, is that little bit of attitude.
Yeah, that's fair. I think we'll certainly see a lot of that from hopefully that transitions into the defense in 2024. Let's have a quick look then at how the Cowboys are standing from a future odds perspective. We are, of course, a gambling show here at Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover. So Vegas has the Cowboys win total line of 10.5. So it's kind of thinking 10, 11 wins, Vegas for the Cowboys. Over 10.5 wins, so 11 plus wins, plus 120, so just over even money. And under 10.5 wins is odds on minus 150, so 2 to 1 on. You place £2 to win £1. What are you thinking, Paul? Do you think the Cowboys can get to 11 wins, or do you think they're going to sit on the underside of that line?
I think as of right now, because I think there's still a lot of answered questions, so I think that's probably the best case scenario right now. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I think realistic, I think it'll be more of a 9 and 8. Kind of realistically, because you need to think about all the games that we've got coming up right now. Like, you've got
a tough schedule again, yeah.
Despite Cleveland as the first game of the year, I think that's going to be a really tough game. Like, when you look at their stacked defense, you've got Myles Garrett, etc. Like New Orleans, I think that will be a win. Baltimore, even though it's at home, but it's still going to be a tough situation. New York, it's safe to assume that's going to be a win. Doesn't matter if it's Daniel Jones or whoever the Italian quarterback, whatever his name is again.
DeVito.
There we go. Yeah, Pittsburgh, they're going for a weird transition right now. They've got Kenny Pickett's now gone. Russell Wilson's in. We don't know what the state of Pittsburgh is right now. Detroit, can they capitalize from last year? So there is quite a few things where, that first part of the season before the bye week, it's it could be 3-3, it could be 4-1, it could be 2-5. It's so difficult to really judge at this moment. So, but after the bye week, San Francisco, who seem to be going strength to strength right now, and as much as I hate to admit that, because obviously San Francisco is one of our biggest rivals, and Atlanta, again, we just don't know. Well, Atlanta's a weird question mark, drafting the quarterback in the first round. Not to throw any shade at all, but I was quite surprised about that. So where does that leave Kirk Cousins? Who is the actual quarterback going to be? Philadelphia at home, I think we'll take that. Houston at home, I'm particularly worried. I'm actually quite worried about that game.
Yeah.
Reason for that, obviously, they brought in Stephon Diggs. Oh my goodness. So many names are just rolling off the tongue there. So they brought Stephon Diggs, quarterback. Shroud had a fantastic rookie season. There's no question about that. Like, give the kid his credit is due. I thought he was definitely performing really, really well. I think he's going to take that next step up. And obviously, they brought in reinforcements to bolster their offense. So I think that's going to be one of the toughest games this season. It's against Houston, which sounds absolutely crazy, despite the history. The Cowboys have always more or less had the upper hand against Houston, especially in Dallas. So I think this one's going to be, and that's a game that I'm attending this year. So I'm particularly worried about it.
Yeah. It's a cracker to attend for sure, but yeah, I think you're right. I think you look through that schedule. It's just tough. It's a very tough. You win the division, you do naturally get a tough schedule the year after. But they're just playing so many teams that were in the playoffs from the previous season. Mike McCarthy's record as Cowboys head coach when you're playing teams, playoff teams, is not great. I think it's something like about 30% win rate. So, you're looking, it's going to be a real struggle for Dallas. If form goes that way, where they might only win 2 or 3 of those games against 9 playoff teams, 9 games, and against teams that made the playoffs, you're struggling to get to 11 wins again. And we're talking about a team that's won 12 wins, won 12 games, 3 consecutive seasons. Just think it's going to be a lot trickier to get there this time around.
Yeah, I mean, can the Cowboys achieve 11 or possibly more? It is possible. It just really depends. It's up to the players. Can they actually put that fire under their backside and actually do something about it and not let previous history, like losing to teams that you were supposed to actually beat, like Arizona, who we lost to Joshua Dobbs. I'm sorry, but that was just simply embarrassing. As a Cowboys fan, I'm sure you guys would feel embarrassed about that game as well. Like the Miami game, we kind of knew that was going to be a tough one. The Buffalo game, tough team. Josh Allen, one of the top quarterbacks in the league. We kind of knew that it was going to be a tough game to go to. San Francisco, we knew that was writing on the wall. But this year, it's going to be even tough more so, I would say, because you've got San Francisco again this year. You've got Baltimore this year, even though it's at home. Trying to think of all the other teams. Cincinnati, I don't know. That's a weird one. Cincinnati is a weird one for me. And obviously, a Philadelphia away to Lincoln Financial, that's going to be a tough one. So there is a possibility we could be 11 plus, but there's also a really good chance we're well below that. So I think, and I don't think there's going to be too many games where we are going to be completely dominating. I think a lot of these games are going to be like your 27-22s or your 17-10 games. It's going to be like one score difference. It's not going to be like what we did to New York, like beating them 40-0. And what was the other game? Yeah. Thank you, Byron.
Yeah, and that might be some balance that's needed in terms of you have those real highs of absolutely dog walking the poorer teams, and actually is there a brand of football you need to develop where you don't need to go beat teams by 35-40 points. Like, that's not what and just beat up on these teams. Do you need to develop a brand of football that's going to help you win in December and January? And that's running the football consistently, being able to stop the run, longer drives, ball control, that sort of piece, instead of the explosive stuff that we've seen from the Cowboys over the last few years. So that is interesting. But yeah, that line, I just think, I'm with you, Paul. I just think it's too many. I'll leave you. I think, a 9 and 8 round that area is probably where the Cowboys are going to end up. Is that going to be enough to get them in the playoffs? To make their odds on to make the playoffs at -240, and to not make the playoffs +190, that's just short of 2-1 in traditional odds. We have the American style odds here, but yes, +190, just short of 2-1. Do you see a world where the Cowboys miss the playoffs this year, Paul?
Unlikely. If I'm being perfectly honest, as much I still think we've got a better quarterback than the Eagles, I still think they've got the easier schedule as of right now. They've got Jacksonville. They've got like quite a lot of similar teams that we've got, but I think they've got, like, in terms of how the placement of their schedule is, I think they've got the easier route to actually become win the NFC East next year. As much as it pains me to say that.
Well, that answers my next question as well, because that's the Cowboys are plus 120 to win the division. So again, that's just over even money. I think we've seen the Eagles are favourites at the minute at plus 100. We'll talk about that in a moment with our Eagles. I want to say friend, but chap that's going to join us. Can't be friends with Eagles fans, can you? Plus 120 to win the conference, the NFC plus 650. So that's 13-2 to make the Super Bowl and win the NFC, and then to win it all. 16-1 or plus 1,600.
Only 16-1 to get to win the Super Bowl.
To win the Super Bowl, yeah.
All things considered, it's actually still quite low odds when you think about it.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have expected maybe 2,500 plus or something like that, 25-1, but 1,600, but the bookies always know.
That is people just bet because it's the Cowboys, maybe they are the world's team. Do people just bet with the heart, maybe, to keep that price low? That's the only thing I can think of, because I fully agree. 2,500 would be a much fairer price.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I think they're being very over generous on lists, but like you just said there, Byron, people have already kind of betting already on it, and it's actually decreased the odds.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm kind of already thinking. But after looking at the off season so far, who we brought in, who we've lost, it's hard to justify that, to say, oh yeah, we're going to win the Super Bowl. So I find it's quite difficult to kind of justify that.
Yeah, crazy. Certainly one I won't be taking, even though with all the will in the world, want it to happen. Sadly, it'll be one I'm sticking away from. It won't be on my sheet. Paul, that brings us to the end of our look at the Cowboys for the 2024 season. You've been an awesome guest. Thanks for joining us. Just give us a shout out again. Where can we follow the World's Team Pod? Where can we follow the Cowboys fans and the Cowboys podcast on the socials?
Yeah, so you can follow the UK Cowboys fans at UK_Cowboys fans on X and UK Cowboys fans on YouTube, and also the World's Team podcast. You can find it on Instagram, X, and on YouTube as well.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us. We are going to hand over to me, Byron, and Joe with Phil, who's representing the Philadelphia Eagles. Phil from the British and Irish Eagles, and we'll preview. Sadly, we do have to do it, as much as we don't want to, preview the Philadelphia Eagles for 2024.
In fairness, the guys from the British Eagles are actually really good guys. They are quite insightful, and they do kind of try and give you a good, realistic perspective. So I will give them credit. So they are actually really quite fit. They're not your typical fan, but they're quite analytical when it comes to their team. So
excellent. Well, couldn't have set it up better for myself. So here's Phil talking about the Eagles.
And we continue on with our look at the NFC East. We've heard about the Cowboys. We've heard about the Giants. We now flip to the Philadelphia Eagles, and we've got a fantastic guest joining us. We've got Phil from the British and Irish Eagles. Phil, welcome to Good Teams Win Great Teams cover. It's fantastic to have you on. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks guys for having us on. It's been a long off season so far, and it's nice to start getting back into thinking about the season that's coming up.
Yeah, this is the first of our 8 episodes previewing each division. So yeah, it kind of feels like once we've got to this point, we're getting there. We're very, very close. And Phil, you're here representing the Philadelphia Eagles, but also the British and Irish Eagles. Tell us a little bit about the British and Irish Eagles, what you guys kind of get up to, and where we can follow along if you are an Eagles fan or not. I suppose it doesn't matter, but yeah.
Yeah, come along regardless. But yeah, we operate the British and Irish Eagles sort of fan base. We took it on as a podcast. We started a podcast, me, Liam, and Mick, about 3 or 4 years ago during COVID, like a lot of people did. Then we got lumped involved with one of the members who came in, who ran the British and Irish Eagles back along. We got involved with him, took on the British and Irish Eagles name, and started doing a lot more than just podcasting. We do we've got pretty good links with the Eagles, and we run a trip out. We started doing our trips last year. We went out and saw them play the Dallas Cowboys and beat them. One of the last games of that season, which is worth remembering.
We'll
Fortunately
talk
for
about
us. But we do giveaways. We've got affiliation and sponsorship with the Passyunk Avenue Sports Bar in London, which you may or may have heard with Jason Kelsey and Travis Kelsey recording their New Heights podcast last weekend. Got released, and they finally could break their silence. So we kind of knew about that happening, and it's quite exciting that we're involved with that as well in sort of tenuous links. But we've got a membership base, and we do watch alongs at Passyunk. We've got a whiskey sponsorship and everything, and we're trying to go back out again this year for another game. And they've just announced that the game that we're going back for is a Kelly Green game. So we continue to be shined.
Is it a Jaguars game you're going to?
Yeah. Not so much a glamorous opposition as the Cowboys were, but I think the Kelly Green adds a little bit of sparkle for us. Hopefully, that'll be the new one for people to get their teeth into to jump on the plane and come across with us.
Doug Peterson homecoming as well.
Was
From
it
the Jags?
No, I mean, I'm trying to think. Was it last season or the season before? I think it might have been last season we played them. I'm not sure where that was. I can't remember if that was in the at Lincoln Financial Field or not. I think it was. I think he's already been back there once before. Because I remember the game was absolutely terrible and it was absolutely pissing it down. And I think there's videos of the pitch before like swelling up and bobbling, and we were like, "There's not going to be a game on." There was. We managed to somehow come away with it, but it definitely wasn't a very entertaining game for the neutrals, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't recall it. Yeah. And you're rocking the Kelly Green today, right?
Yeah, I figured I'd stick the Kelly Green Hurts jersey on that I picked up at the trip last year as well. And an obscene amount of money was spent at the pro shop there. Not necessarily by me, but I think we probably collectively sustained them for a year's worth of fees.
It sounds like a great trip. And again, like if you run it, make sure if you are Eagles fan or not, go give the page a follow at British Eagles, and you'll find the British and Irish Eagles there on Twitter. That's on Twitter or X. Anywhere, is it the same handle on other socials as well?
Yes, I think so. I don't run the Instagram account, but I know we are as prevalent on there as we can be. It's sort of hard to break these social media platforms. X is our most publicized ones. We have our biggest following on there, but that's the Instagram. We are on Facebook as well, but definitely not as prevalent there
as much. Cool. We'll make sure we get the Instagram tagged in the post as well, so that everyone can follow along. Good stuff. Again, thanks, Phil, and thanks for joining us. Let's get into it then. So you are our Philadelphia Eagles expert for the next 20-25 minutes. And let's get into it. So we've got the deck up. Joe, you're in control. I suppose, Phil, if we're going to start with the preview for 2024, we need to kind of just have a bit of a look back at 2023 for the Philadelphia Eagles. We've got some headlines. The Eagles finished 11-6, finished second in the NFC East behind the Cowboys. They lost 6 of the last 7 games to end the season after flying out the blocks with a 10-1 start. Could that possibly have been the big dom effect in the San Francisco 49ers game? Defense dropped off a cliff from where it was certainly the year before and down the stretch. And then season ended in a loss to Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the wild card game, 32-9. Phil, if in a few words or a short sentence, how would you sum up the 2023 season for the Philadelphia Eagles?
I think the easiest way to sum it up is just to say the word cliff, really. It was a huge cliff that the team fell off at the end of last season. It was a great start, obviously, and I think we got into a rhythm. We only lost 1 game before we got to San Francisco game, and then it just suddenly things just collapsed. It's a season best. It's hard to look back on the season with any kind of fond memories because of how it ended. But the start of 10-1 start, the games that we had, the Kelly Green games against the Dolphins and playing the Vikings and getting wins against sort of better teams, because the season before, obviously going to the Super Bowl and having that hangover, it felt like we kind of navigated that. So we'd got, oh no, it's not going to affect us as much. We'd had a bit of changeover, new defensive coordinator, new offensive coordinator, but it seemed like we were navigating it, and then it just suddenly the wheels just fell off and no one could decide what it was. There was so many different reasons why. Changing defensive coordinator, essentially making him a straw man and bringing in Matt Patricia certainly doesn't strike of a very solid organisation, or at least they knew what was going on. They were sort of trying different things. There's so many different theories as to what happened, but ultimately, what matters most is that at the end of the season and the off season so far, we've definitely taken steps to make sure that sort of stuff doesn't happen again. I know we'll get onto that in a second. But yeah, the wildcard game against the Buccaneers, I think by that point we'd all resigned ourselves that the season was just not going to reach the lofty points that that we were thinking when we were 10-1. So it sort of by that point, I think it was like just that Simpsons gif where it's stop. He's already dead. Just get on with it, and let's get out of this season as quickly as possible, basically.
Yeah. And even like at the point of 10-1, and even before it got to that point, the Eagles were finding different ways to win games. There's a stretch before they started losing games where they were coming from behind, 10 plus points down in the second half. They were finding ways to beat big teams. The Chiefs in particular was that one in week 11 to go beat the Chiefs on Monday Night Football, the Bills game in overtime. Several others where they were down big in games and were finding ways to win them. What is it in your opinion? What was the trigger? I know that there's the Niners game in week 13. That was obviously a big beating, and the way it ended up going. But what was it just all of a sudden just transition from the level they were playing at to just drop off completely?
It's so hard to say because there's obviously something that probably happened behind the scenes, and we may or may not ever know exactly what the root cause that. But there are plenty of things that we do know. Like I said, the coordinators changing, the Big Dom. Generally, I know you guys have made the joke at how the Big Dom effect, but I think he's even bigger. And obviously, you might have seen that he's been given extra titles this season. He's gone up in the world. He does everything. Liam's been over and he spent some time with him. Because he went out to the trip early, and he's got all sorts of stories and things that he's told me. It's sort of like it's unbelievable how much influence that guy has on the organization. So losing a guy like that, and kind of it kind of fits a Hollywood narrative. Like during that game, he got sent away from the game, and then in the Eagles season somehow at the exact same time dropped off. I don't think it's as simple as that at all. I think he has a massive influence, and there's obviously something like that that's gone on behind the scenes. But if you look at the games leading up to that, even the Dallas game that we were there for, it was right down to the wire. We gave them plenty of opportunities to beat us, and we just managed to nick it at the end by stopping Dak and flipping him 180, which was a particularly enjoyable moment of the season. But then you look at the Chiefs game after that and the Bills game, very close, very like they're epic wins. Like you feel really good after them, but when you look back at them, you're like, yeah, we didn't do awfully well. So I think maybe the team going into the season kind of got lulled into the false sense of everything being fine, and they're just carrying on and ignoring the little leaky holes in the ship and just trying to crack on. And then eventually it just caught up with us, I think. And then the Niners game was just the tipping point where things just started to unravel and we just couldn't get it back.
Yeah, it's just a great point you made there. Those kind of 3 wins in a row, the Cowboys, Chiefs, Bills, that's all been things that gain you momentum in the way a season goes and kind of push you along. But yeah, it just didn't work out to be that case. If we move on then, that's 2023. Let's start having a look at the off season. The headline. So I suppose a couple of bits. You've got the man's jersey hanging up behind you there, but Jason Kelce retired along with Fletcher Cox in the off season. We've seen the Eagles be pretty active with contract extensions, but the biggest ones for the 2 wide receivers, AJ Brown and Devonta Smith. A second consecutive year where there's a new offensive coordinator and new defensive coordinator in Philadelphia, in Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio. And Eagles win the offseason again, kind of the way the draft fell, and I guess free agency as well. Navigating those choppy waters, and the Eagles have seemed to have managed it pretty successfully again. Let's just start by talking about the first point, and particularly Jason Kelce. It's going to be weird that Jason Kelce isn't playing at centre for the Philadelphia Eagles in 2024. What impact or what you're expecting to kind of see? How are the Eagles going to kind of replace someone who's not only just an important figure on the offensive line, but in the organisation as a whole?
Well, we've been trying, I think, to find Kelce's replacement for the last 2 or 3 seasons because Dickerson was originally signed, and as a guard centre, Jurgens, and now we've got Tyler Steen as well coming in. We've tried to find players in the draft, and they've usually been around the same point. So usually most of them are second round or even third round picks, trying to sort of find the guy that's eventually going to replace him and have them play alongside him. Part of the problem is that Kelsey has remained pretty well and pretty fit on the field, and obviously how the legendary status of the guy is going to be impossible to replace. But we've not really had much opportunity apart from Dickerson, maybe to play alongside him and pick up stuff. I'm sure they have, but we're now sort of in a position where we've got 3 or 4 players. We brought in Matt Hennessy as well from Atlanta as well to sort of try and give us a bit of a camp battle in that regard. I think Jurgens is the de facto relief. It's his to lose, but they've not relying on that too much, and because Dickerson's done so well at guard, they don't want to move. They don't want to lose that, because there's no point. Do you want to move as few people as possible? But it's one of those things. I mean, as a Man United fan, boo. It kind of feels a little bit like when Sir Alex Ferguson retires. It's like, how do you replace someone of that magnitude? I know it's sort of slightly different, but in terms of the feeling I get going into the season is similar to when we went in the first season after Fergie retired, which was a bit of optimism, but deep down that it's going to be impossible, and you've got to sort of be realistic and expect that kind of play, not just from the snapping the ball, but his impact in the run game was absolutely phenomenal. And how many highlights are seen on the screen where you see Kelsey's overtaking wide receivers, or he's down further than the tight end. It's just like, how has this guy snapped the ball and it's just bulldozing people? I'm not saying the other guys can't do that, but there are certain qualities like that you're really going to miss. Not just the guy, but the actual skill from the player.
Yeah. We talked about there a couple of minutes ago, right? The Philadelphia had a new offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator last year. That's happened again this year in Kellen Moore, who's very familiar with the division, and Vic Fangio. Is the pressure sort of building on Sirianni from your perspective around kind of that point of getting him to the Super Bowl, having such a good start, and then just last season, then just tailing off? Do you feel this pressure, or do you feel that Sirianni's still got a bit of leeway and a bit of credit in the bank for the work done so far?
He's going into his overdraft for sure. He's not got much credit left, and he's a little bit of a straw man. I use that term again with his position, because it felt very much like he was going to go. And I feel like the only reason he's staying is because Howie basically gave him 2 envelopes, and he picked the one that kept his job. It's like, in this envelope, you must have a brand new offensive coordinator, a brand new defensive coordinator, and you must relinquish play calling duties to both of them. They're essentially running the team. You are a man manager, because fantastic guy, that he's good for the team. He's almost like he's a glorified cheerleader, and I feel like I'm being overly harsh, but it's kind of what he's been reduced to by the organization, because it was when things started to go wrong in the defensive side of the ball, and that he obviously gets more involved in that. And it's not a strong suit. Calling plays is not a strong suit. He is good at organizing the team, arranging the team, making sure everyone is taken care of, and running the team as a stepping back kind of aspect. When he gets asked to get bogged down in calling plays, I just don't think that's his strong suit. And I think that's where we're looking at it as a positive, that the new OC and DC come in, we should have the power that they've been crying out for and that they want. And Sirianni is in that situation. If it works, Sirianni will keep his job. If it still doesn't work, then there's only one more thing to do to try and fix the problem in the coaching side of it.
Yeah,
go
on, Byron, sorry.
I found it interesting as well, after the 2023, I guess, experiment maybe with the OC and DC, they were much less experienced coordinators than Kellen Moore, who's been at 4 or 5 years probably now with the Chargers and the Cowboys, obviously. And I mean, Vic Fangio, goodness me. What he doesn't know about defensive football isn't probably worth writing down. So I think those are notably much more experienced options. And I think, like you say, it's going to allow Sirianni to get back to doing what Sirianni does best.
Yeah, for as much as we maligned Jonathan Gannon at the end of the 2022 season, I was one of the vocal points saying, I don't like the guy, I didn't enjoy his football, but he's clearly not doing too badly at Arizona. He did better than we thought. There's the head coach this season. And I feel like, yeah, you're right. It was just a step too far. He was having to be their daddy, be the father figure, look after them to a lower level, and that took him away from doing the things that he does well, I think.
Cool. Good stuff. Let's have a flip over and we'll start having a look at kind of the key moves through free agency and the draft. We've touched obviously on the departures in Kelsey and Fletcher Cox as well, retiring. I suppose there's a lot of additions. We couldn't fit them all on one slide. There were that many free agency for Philadelphia. But what are the key ones? Obviously Saquon, probably the headline, coming over from the Giants. And yeah, a couple of others there as well. CJ Gardner-Johnson returning after his year in Detroit. Bryce Huff over from the Jets. Which moves are you most excited about, and which ones do you think are kind of going to have the biggest impact, Phil, this season?
Well, you said it's hard to look past Saquon Barkley. I didn't think the Eagles would ever make that kind of move. It's not a position that they usually value, and running backs are notoriously fragile and can fall off cliffs quite easily. It made sense that the Eagles never fully invested in the role. Miles Sanders was a second round pick, I believe, when he was signed, and we almost went for Bijan last year. I'm pretty sure if Carter had been taken, there would have been a strong shout for him to do that, but that would have been unusual. But to get the guy, I mean, I think he's been massively disadvantaged being at the Giants. The Giants have just, they've wasted his better years. I'm not saying that we're going to have supreme amount of luck, because there's a huge amount of risk with this kind of signing. With our O-line and with our O-line coaching and our more established game, the Eagles are just a better run organization. And he seems instantly happier. He seems, he's a Penn State guy. He's back. He's got the home factor put in. I think there's a lot of buzz, and I think the first game that Barkley runs out in an Eagles jersey is going to be pretty special all round, even if it is in Brazil. But CJ coming back, I think is a really interesting one as well, because obviously he was instrumental in the Super Bowl run. Then depending on your point of view, contract issues, and didn't want to be at the team or wanted to get paid more money. The Eagles didn't want to pay it, or the Eagles offered him money, but said go and find it elsewhere. He couldn't find it, but the Eagles had moved on by the time he came back. So there was a lot of bad blood last year. He said some things about the Eagles. The Eagles said, we as Eagles fans said plenty about him. And then as soon as it turned out he was coming back, all was forgiven. But the way he came back was proper tail between his legs, humble, guy, kind of going, look, we said some stuff. Let's just go win a Super Bowl. And I think Philly fans massively respect that. Like you hold your hands up. If you know anything about baseball, there's a guy called Alec Boehm who's doing particularly well this season. But when his first season with the Phillies, he's notoriously on video saying, "I fucking hate this place." Sorry if you're not allowed to swear, but and then literally about six months later, once he'd sort of owned it up, was like now a fan favorite. I think I'm looking forward to seeing him come back, because I feel like he was actually more instrumental. It's like when you break up with an ex. You always try to over justify, like, oh yeah, it wasn't very good and blah blah blah. But as soon as they come back, you're like, well, maybe it wasn't so bad and all that sort of stuff. But those are the two ones. Those are the two ones I'm looking at free agency. But the draft side of things, I think, was another Howie masterclass. I think we look forward to the draft as much as any regular season game, because we just know that Howie has the skills and the ability and everything to always do something good, and to get Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean as both together. We were, you do all your mock drafts and you're like, which one would you have? And it's like Quinion Mitchell won't be there. I think Howie had a bit of a hand in forcing the run on offensive tackles, if you want to go into the conspiracy theories stakes, because I feel like the Eagles were touted as aggressively moving up to get their guy, and it was touted as being a Lane Johnson type replacement. In the end, no defensive player gets taken before pick 18, and the Eagles have their pick of, Quinion Mitchell, or I can't remember what the other guy was, but obviously went a pick later, and then still aggressively trading up with Washington to get Cooper DeJean when we had 2 picks in the second round just to get our guy. And then I think the one that Eagles fans are all looking forward to is Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Just from a nostalgia perspective, there's a lot of Axe fans in the Eagles, a lot of older Axe fans. It's before my time, but I already know how important his dad was to the team, and I think people are being reserved because there's a lot of, pump the brakes on this one. But I think from a vanity perspective, a lot of people are getting really excited about that one as well.
I think there's again, draft day, draft night and day one, day two, looking at kind of the way that the Eagles, again, sort of masterfully work their way kind of around the board, to be in that position where that secondary was a need. I think, sure, even with what had been done in free agency, just because of kind of how far the unit had tailed off in 2023 at the back end. But to get, you could arguably say those were the two top corners. To get those, with the Eagles' first two picks is, crazy value. Mitchell was I nailed on top 15 pick. Cooper DeJean was talking about definitely going in the first round, and to come out with both of them, pretty incredible stuff again from kind of the front office. Byron, Joe, kind of what else is standing out in kind of the moves that the Eagles have made for you two?
I mean, doing a bit, revisiting, as we get ready to prepare for the NFL season again. Just looking at this Eagles draft killed me. I'm a Cowboys fan, Phil, and
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, me too. I love Cooper DeJean coming out, and I think someone like Vic Fangio is going to have a ball with him. I think he's going to have a lot of fun. I think Johnny Wilson's a real interesting prospect as well. There's a lot of talk that he'll end up moving to tight end eventually, but I mean, Howie and Nick Sirianni have come out and said they see him as a wide receiver, and he's a big wide receiver. Devonta Parker obviously signed and then retired, which I think might be a blessing in disguise, truthfully, for the Eagles. But yeah, I'm really interested to see how much run he gets year one, if any. Obviously, it's not an easy wide receiver group to break into, but there is kind of room for a 4 to break out there. Aeneas Smith as well, I think, on this new return duty. He excelled at that in college, so I think those late hits, I think it's going to be real good. I think Will Shipley can contribute in that way as well. And yeah, obviously, you talk about Saquon Barkley at the top as being a game changer. He's certainly one of my favourite running backs to watch, even as a Cowboys fan. And he still will be. He'll just probably hurt more because he'll be on a good team now. So I think, once again, Roseman smashes it in the offseason. It's a cliche, but it's a cliche for a good reason.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
No, you go, Phil. I'll let you go.
I was just going to say that probably the only position on the Eagles team at the moment that is definitely up for grabs in terms of the exciting, skill positions is wide receiver 3 for us, like you say, with Parker having a flying visit to the team and deciding that he wasn't going to get the right moves. But I was baffled by that move as well. I didn't excite it. I was quite happy when he decided to retire because I didn't know what it's for. But that gives a lot of opportunity, like you said, for Johnny Wilson and Aeneas Smith to come in, but also I think Zach Pascal as well also joined the team. Was it Paris Campbell?
Paris Campbell, yeah, I think.
Paris Campbell came in as well. Who's never shone, but he's always seemed like a real interesting route runner. When he was first at Indianapolis, I loved him, to be fair. And then he got injured a lot. But again, if you can just carve out a little role, he'll get open.
Yeah. There's a camp back for it. It's almost considered a bit of a concern for the team because we've got such a good setup of offensive weapons now, but that one guy is just going to perform and be productive whilst everyone else is, because there is no weak area now apart from maybe wide receiver 3. If you're a defense looking at the Eagles, you're kind of going, well, there's no one we can kind of just let go. So that person has that, that wide receiver 3 position is definitely a need. I think there's the addition of Saquon Barkley's receiving capability and Shipley is as well might mitigate that a bit, but I think wide receiver 3 is probably the most interesting camp battle that we're going to be looking at in our podcast.
Joe, before we flip, you were about to.
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate, especially getting the cornerbacks that room, because I think that's where the issues were last year, especially when you come off the season with all them sacks the year before. Why the defensive line not as high a standard? Was it because of the cornerbacks? And I do like that Bryce Huff move. Obviously, you traded Hassan Reddick away, which is to get someone who feels like, he doesn't play all the downs, but I don't think the Eagles need him to do that. They just need him to get after the quarterback and, get them sack numbers back up to where they were. And I think all the contract extensions, we've seen plenty of wide receivers and other teams struggling and not signing their players, and the Eagles felt like, let's get it done early. Let's get it on, on the cheap compared to what the other wide receivers are going to get because of that Justin Jefferson contract. So I think, that was big moves for the Eagles.
That's a really good point as well. I keep forgetting about that aspect that isn't as glamorous, but the fact that we got all players signed, all we paid our wide receivers, paid both of them, because there was a huge confidence in a lot of fans that we weren't going to keep one of Smith or Brown. We weren't going to be able to. Me, honestly, will take a bit of a whiff on this one and go, I trusted Howie. It just felt like he was going to find a way to do it, and if anyone could do it, he would. And I think if both players believed in the team, there's a way to sort of get it work and say, well, you help us out now, we'll help you out down the line. And I think they obviously believe in the team, so that's another positive side of it, is that AJ Brown is quite a character who could quite easily get turned off and go, I don't want to be here, I don't want to do this isn't fitting me, I want to get paid somewhere else. And he could quite easily get paid somewhere else. For him to quite happily take that amount of money for what his position is, whether you rank him above players like CD Lamb or anyone like that or not, it's a steal. It absolutely is. And it does, as a Cowboys fan, Byron, I think you'll I'm interested to know your thoughts about CD Lamb and what's going to happen with him.
Well, I was going to say, it must be really comforting to have all your best players under contract. More than
it is very comforting.
You've got CD Lamb, Micah Parsons, and Dak Prescott all coming up to contracts. And you look across to Philly and you go, that must be nice. No stress, no drama. And you do it early and it ends up being a bargain because you do it early and you believe in your players and they believe in you. Once again,
there's a risk. There's a risk for paying them.
With the cap forever going up, the risk, I think, is strongly mitigated by having conviction in your ability to self-scout. If you constantly try and look for a bargain, like Jerry Jones tries to do, ultimately you pay twice in the end. So, I would much rather have a Howie Roseman approach to life than the Jones family.
Yeah, effective contract management is something we can only dream of.
Yeah.
Right, let's have a look at the odds then. This is where we make our money. So let's see what you think, Phil, where we're at for the Eagles. So the line for win total for the Eagles is 10.5. Which side do you think the Eagles are going to come out on? Do you think you'll be under 10.5 wins? I guess it's 11. Under 11 wins or over?
I think Vegas is never wrong, and I think they've got it kind of spot on with the over and under. It's hard to pick as a fan, and based on what we've discussed so far, I've got to comfortably say that they'll hit 11. I feel like even with last season, if you just use that as a marker, even when things fell off, we managed to stack enough wins by that point. The only things for me that scale it back is I don't like the fact that we're in Brazil. First game, it's such an unknown factor. You get off to a win in Brazil or a defeat in Brazil, it massively impacts which path you go down. It's not like last season when we could sort of ease ourselves into it. We stacked up wins before we needed to, and I said that last season that based on that stretch that we had from the Cowboys, we needed to stack up wins, and they did that, and then obviously proved to be very, very true that we needed. If we hadn't done that, we probably would have missed out on the playoffs altogether. Who knows what would have happened? But this season, I think with the coordinators changes, the experience that's come in, the fact that we've locked everyone down, everything's settled, very little has changed. Yes, we have lost two massive legends in Kelsey and Cox, but I feel like everything's there in place to succeed, and I don't think there's any reason to really doubt the Eagles from having a difficult season. I feel like 11 wins is definitely achievable. I think if, close to the season, you'll probably be asking me and I'll be up at 13, 14. But, as we talk ourselves into the season, but I think trying to keep my sensible head on, I think 12 wins is definitely the marker that we're aiming for.
And with that, the Eagles themselves are heavily odds on to make the playoffs. I think it's 2-1 on to make the playoffs, and then to not make the playoffs plus 175 or just short of 2-1 in traditional money to make the playoffs. And if you're going to get to 11-12 wins, that's definitely going to be the case. 11 wins last year wasn't enough to win the division. How confident are you that the Eagles will get to the number the magic number you need to win the NFC East. Nobody's won it 2 years in a row for 20 odd years. So, and the Eagles are the best place to do it after the Cowboys for sure.
Yeah, well, based on history, it can't be the Cowboys. So out of the remaining three, we're definitely the best place to do it. But all joking aside, I think even including the Cowboys, I think the Eagles are definitely the best place to do it. The Commanders are probably the wild card in that factor because of the amount of change. And there's been some good change in the Commanders. You know, the coaching staff is more experienced. The quarterback is coming in number 2 overall, Jaden Daniels. It's exciting. They brought in some incredible players, Jeremy Chin, Eckler. I mean, some players are they brought in are getting on a bit. They're sort of going for the Bolton Wanderers in the 90s approach, sort of trying to sign all the players at the end of their prime, trying to capture that last little bit of glory. And there's every chance, if you look back when they topped the division out of nowhere, what was it, during COVID year? It only takes things to click a little bit for you to go on a run, and the Commanders, are the sort of team that can do that. But as for the Giants, I feel like the dumpster fire can just stay where it is, to be honest.
Yeah, it's looking to be another rough one for the Giants. But yeah, interesting. I think you're right. Yeah, in this division, the Commanders, if everything clicks, they could just kind of come out of nowhere, which will make things interesting. The Eagles then are plus 120, so just over even money to win the division. Conference winners 6.5 to 1 plus 650 are 13 to 2 to win the NFC and 16 to 1 to win the Super Bowl. We discussed this the other week as an early look at the odds and things like that. I think 16 to 1 on the Eagles is a really big prize. How confident do you think are you, Phil, with this team that the Eagles can get to the Super Bowl and win it?
I think based on last season is where a lot of the odds are coming from. It's hard to place them based on that, and there's a lot of unknowns. Come 2 or 3 games into the season, it'll probably seem like great odds. Apologies if you can hear my dog in the background. I think the door's just gone. And I think it's great odds. Stick a bet on the Eagles right now because they've, like I said, if you listen to the pod and you've just heard us talk about how established they've fixed the problems, and they've even done some things that they don't normally do. So they've been a bit bolder as well. So they've fixed the problems. They've put the neck out a little bit, and I feel like the Super Bowl is definitely within the grasp. But that's when you have to start taking into account the Niners as the obvious stepping stone to that. And I think there's been some other NFC teams that have definitely made significant improvements. But I feel like it's one of those things: you win the division or you get the number 1 seed overall. From that, with our division, with everything going on, if we can get the wins under the belt and we can not fall off the cliff, because if you look, like I said, you look at last season, if we didn't fall off the cliff, how many wins would we have achieved? If we'd managed to sort of keep going, probably would have been number 1. Well, we were the 1 seed at that point. We would have established the 1 seed, and we would have been heavy favourites for the Super Bowl. But I think it all depends on how your season goes, and the fixture list, fortunately, because of the bad season we had, is a lot more favourable than it was last year. So I think it's a lot more balanced, although heavily loaded with the first 10 games. I think 7 of the last 8 games I think are at the Link. So we're on the road a lot. So it all depends. It all depends how we get through the first half of the season.
Yeah, it does seem like a bit of a more balanced schedule because they had a rough ride of it, the Eagles. Playing the Cowboys twice, and the Cowboys were pretty good as always, but then the Chiefs, the Bills, it's a lot of strong teams. So yeah, the way it went. Phil, thanks for joining us. Any more questions for Phil, Byron, Joe before we let him go?
I was just gonna say, what would kind of define a successful Eagles season next year? Where do you have to finish?
I think getting past the wild card is probably the marker for me. I wouldn't want to be. I'd want to win the division, so I'd want to be into the divisional round, and I think getting through to the conference championship should be the aim, just because of everything we've said so far. But I think that anything less than the playoffs would be considered a failure.
And that was my next question.
Yeah, I think you're right. Definitely, if they don't make the playoffs, Sirianni's definitely gone, isn't he? So, yeah, for sure. Phil, just give us a reminder before I let you go again. Where can we follow the British and Irish Eagles?
Yeah, so it's at British Eagles on X, at British Eagles on Instagram as well. We have a website, british-eagles.co.uk, where you can, future Eagles members can sign up, find out information about our trips to Philly. We run fantasy football competitions as well, so there's entry forms for all that, and giveaways of Eagles signed merchandise. We gave away a game day jersey of Devontae Smith signed by him for our fantasy league last year. They all came to my house, and I had to box them all up and send them off to other people whilst crying into my hand. Just shows the integrity of me, to be honest. I could quite easily have hidden that one, but no, there was some excellent prizes we get directly from the Eagles. So get onto our website, sign up, become a member, follow us on Twitter, on Instagram, and join us for the ride.
Awesome. Well, Phil, thanks very much for joining us. And I don't, normally we would say like good luck for the season, but as me and Byron as Cowboy fans and Joe as a Niners fan, I don't think we can honestly say that. But thanks very much for coming on. Hope you enjoyed the season, enjoy your trip, and hopefully we'll get you back on kind of during the season to kind of see how things are going with the Eagles. But yeah, reminder everyone, go follow Phil and the British and Irish Eagles at British Eagles over on Twitter or Instagram. And we're going to move on. Thanks to Phil there from the British and Irish Eagles for giving us such a comprehensive preview of the Philadelphia Eagles. That brings us to the final segment of our show this week. We're going to take a look at our early best bets, or our early podium bets. That's what we're calling it for the NFC. So myself, Joe, and Byron have all picked a gold, silver, and bronze bet in honor of it being an Olympic year. That we fancy. So gold, the one that we really, really like the most. Silver, that we're pretty confident on, and a bronze that's maybe a bit of either a longer shot or something we aren't quite as confident on, but I've got a sneaky feeling it might happen. Let's hit them up then. I'm up first. Let me talk you through mine. So my gold. I should start bronze, shouldn't I? It's always bronze, silver, gold. Yeah, we do bronze first. Bronze, I've gone for exact order bet for the NFC East. So Eagles to win it, followed by the Commanders in second, Cowboys in third, Giants in fourth at plus 1,400 or 14-1 in old money. We talked about, I really like the Commanders as a sneaky potential playoff wildcard team. I'm not particularly confident in the Cowboys, as discussed in our Cowboys preview earlier on. I think the Cowboys are going to struggle, so I think the Eagles potentially going to win the NFC East quite easy. I think the Commanders can find a way to get to 9-10 wins and sneak in the playoffs. Second, Cowboys third, and then the Giants just propping up the division. So I like that exact order bet. My silver bet, no surprises given what I've just said. The Washington Commanders to make the playoffs at 3-1. I was told whether to go to their over win total or they made the playoffs, because the increase in odds obviously is that a little bit more to get it to 3-1, but then they've also got to find an extra 2 to 3 wins. So I was torn between the two, but yeah, Commanders to make the playoffs. I think we could see, as we've just mentioned in the Commanders part, a season similar to the RG3 season that we had from Jaden Daniels. So the Commanders could find a way to get in the dance. And then Cowboys under 10.5 wins is my gold medal bet, and I will be hammering this. The schedule's brutal. Cowboys are in a mess. There's no way. I absolutely cannot see a way the Cowboys get to 11 wins. So those are my podium bets, gents. My gold medal, gold, silver, and bronze. What are your thoughts?
I like the exact order bet. I think that's a real smart one at 1,400. It is 1,400 for a reason. Obviously, it's not a smash, but I think the Eagles, we might get to, when we get to mine, you'll kind of see how I feel about the Eagles, I guess. But I think the Eagles are a real strong bet to win the division. I think the Giants are a real strong bet to finish bottom of the division. And if you were to offer me 1,400 for the Cowboys to finish behind the Commanders, I think you'd happily take it. So, yeah, I think that's a real strong bet for a bronze medal, certainly.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I'm not as pessimistic about the Cowboys as much as you guys. You guys obviously played deep, dived a lot deeper and see well, but I still think they've got superstars, and I think superstars wins the game. So I think they're good best in terms of the money. I'll be surprised if the Commanders finish above the Cowboys, just for reason. But like what Byron said, for 1,400 for them too, I'm fairly confident with the Eagles and Giants finishing first and last. So it's just, who finishes in the middle one to win that money.
Excellent. Right. Let's move on to our next contender. Byron, talk us through yours.
Yes, I didn't go for a super long shot. I just went kind of confidence level 3-2-1. But my bronze one is Daniel Jones to go under 2,900 and a half passing yards. He's done it, I think, twice in his career. I don't think he's set up to do it this year. I think it's going to be a lot of close games. I think it's going to be a lot of run the clock and ground and pound. I do think as well there's a very good chance Daniel Jones doesn't play half the season, whether it's through his own injuries, which he's prone to getting banged up. He is coming back from an ACL as well, which doesn't necessarily mean he's going to hit the ground running. But I also think his only guarantees for injury next year, they can save an awful lot of money by cutting him at the end of this season, which I think is probably what is going to happen. The Giants front office was also talking up Drew Lock as a ranking similarly to how they viewed the top quarterbacks in this draft. Daniel Jeremiah had a great piece about it around the draft time. So they obviously value Drew Lock as a quarterback that is startable. So, I think there's a good chance that Daniel Jones doesn't play the full season. And even if he did play the full season, I think 3,000 yards or 2,900 is about his upper limit. So, I think that's just a real solid bet. It's minus 115. My silver is for the Eagles score 2-0 against the Cowboys this year, which they haven't done for a while, but it's plus 190. Both those games happen. I think the first one is in week 10 and then week 17. By that point, I think the Eagles could be really strong. And one of my, I don't know if conspiracy theories, but out there, maybe theories about the Cowboys this year is I think Dak, if he has no contract going into the year or, for 2025, I do worry that Dak might not be playing at his full potential, especially midway through the season onwards when, he might have one eye on 2025, especially if the Cowboys aren't hitting at a high rate, aren't looking like a potential Super Bowl team. And I wonder if Jerry turns to Trey Lance to look at the future, to see if it's worth investing in Trey Lance for the future. I think this all in with the Cowboys, I think it might end up being a bit of a sad state of affairs. And I just think the Eagles score 2-0 at plus 190 is a great bet. And on that note, my top bet is for the Eagles to win the division. I called this out months ago as one of my favorite bets, and it was plus 130 then. Them and the Cowboys were both 130. The Eagles are now plus 100. I still think it's a great bet. I think they're one of the best, most improved teams in the offseason, probably the most improved in the NFC, truthfully. They were already good last year. They just had obviously a disastrous end to the season. I think on paper, they've probably got they definitely have the most talent in the NFC East. They might be the best on paper team in the NFC, truthfully. Them and the Niners are battling for that. But I think they're a clear step above the other three teams in this division, and plus 100, plus money to win the division, I think is just kind of a little wild, truthfully. So, as long as that's plus money, I'm going to be taking it.
Excellent. Good stuff. Joe, thoughts on Byron's?
Yeah, like them all. Yeah, good enough to play expand. I think Byron said it all. But especially the Eagles one. Obviously, you'll see with my best coming up. I think a lot of people have been putting money on that because it feels like the division odds have not really changed the last few weeks, but the one which has changed is the Eagles. So I'm guessing a lot of people have saw the price beforehand, and that's why it's gone down to plus 100. But it's still a good price, and I'll not be shocked if in another month or two that's even worse odds. So get it on now.
Excellent. Like I say, Nobody's won the NFC East consecutively for 20 years since the Eagles did it last in the early 2000s. So, sounds like we're going to get another different winner. And, I like that as well. I think it's great money. It was great value at 130. Still great value at even money at plus 100. And, I do like that one. And, I really like the Daniel Jones passing yards one as well. I think that's interesting. I think we talked about in the other part of the show, I all think the Giants are going to struggle, particularly on offense. And, under 2,900 passing yards seems likely. Joe finishes off then. You've got your podium bets. Talk us through your bronze, silver, and gold.
Yeah, so for my bronze, I've got Malik Neighbours to get the most rookie receiving yards in the league. Obviously, it's against some stiff competition, but it's plus 550. I think he was like the third or fourth favourite. So I just like the odds. And I just think the Giants haven't got too many weapons, but hopefully that doesn't mean teams just block him out and he just can't do much. But I think he's more of a home run hitter. So he might not get the most touchdowns or even catches, but he might get the receiving yards where he's just hitting, long plays, just hitting a 70-yarder here and there because Daniel Jones can't throw it down the field. So it's a lot of, quick passing attack, and he suddenly bursts out and gets a lot of yards. So that's my bronze medal. I've got the Commanders to finish third, is at plus 180. I think we mentioned that within the Giants finishing bottom, and I think that's what the odds makers think it's in between the Commanders and Giants to finish fourth. But I think Commanders are a step above the Giants. I still think the Cowboys are better than the Commanders. So at plus 180, I do like the Commanders to finish third. So that's my silver. And finally, it's Eagles to win the conference at plus 650. I think they're going to win the division. I think they possibly will get the 1 seed as well in the NFC. And it feels like the last few years, whoever gets a 1 seed makes it to the Super Bowl. So compared to the other contenders, so like the 49ers and the Lions, I think their divisions have got better and there's a lot more competition from top to bottom compared to the Eagles. So I do like the Eagles to win the conference, and at plus 650, I think that's good odds versus I think the 49ers are plus 250. So I think the difference is where it's worth putting a money on. Obviously, I hope it doesn't happen, but with how the odds are, I think it's a good bet.
Excellent, cool, good stuff. Yeah, I like those. Yeah, I think Neighbours is interesting. Mouse them up if Tommy DeVito makes it back in, but we'll see. Gents, that's our first NFC East, division preview episode, all wrapped up. We've knocked the rust off. It's serious football business all the way now, from now all the way until February.
No more bakery chat.
No more bakery chat. Although if you've missed it, go listen to our Greg's draft. It was awesome.
And on that point, just shouting out, it is the 1st of July, so if anything big happens and we've missed it, that's why.
Yes.
Very good point.
Missed it also on the 1st of July. Like the very first part of our episode and bits in between. So yes, that's the way it's just going to roll with these previews, because we're being ambitious and doing it in big chunks, instead of just sitting down and trying to get everyone together. So cool. Thanks to our guests. Thanks for Phil from the British and Irish Eagles. Thanks to the UK Cowboys guys as well for joining us. We'll be back with the AFC East next week. We've got some cracking guests lined up for that to talk us through another very interesting division. They're all interesting divisions, of course, but the AFC East even more intriguing this year. As always, go give us a follow. Good Teams and Great Teams cover over on Spotify, at GTW_GTC on YouTube, where you can see our faces as long as hearing our voices, as well as hearing our voices. It's been a long day. TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter RX at GTW_GTC. And until next time, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon.